right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 6:01, so we will go ahead and get this public hearing and work session started. This is the City Council public hearing work session for June the 12th, and the clerk will call the roll.
Mayor Brian Mock,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Jimmy First.
Here.
Councilmember John Mesa. Present. Councilmember Leslie Robson. Here. Councilmember Paul Stovall.
Here.
Councilmember Elmer Vai.
Here.
All right, if somebody would move to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda as presented?
A motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? All in favor? And the agenda is approved. Do we have anything? We don't have anything under announcements tonight? Okay, all right. We have the public hearing for non-zoning matters. First up, this is the millage rate 2025. I will read the rules of order for public hearing. The mayor is the presiding officer. All remarks shall be addressed to the city council as a body, not to individual members. Anyone wishing to speak shall come to the microphone, give your name and address to the city clerk. Limit remarks to 3 minutes unless further time is granted by council. Not speak a second time until everyone wishing to speak has spoken once and no one can speak more than twice. Please do not speak unless you have the microphone and have been recognized. And with that, we will open up the discussion on the millage rate for 2025.
Thank you, Mayor. This is our millage rate public hearing number 2. We had one this morning at 11:30. As you know, state law requires us to hold 3 public hearings before we adopt our millage rate and set it for the fiscal year. In December of 2024, the city adopted a general fund budget of roughly $35.9 million. That includes all of our revenues in the general fund and property taxes, and that was set with an anticipated millage rate of 6.25 mils. The city's millage rate has been set at 6.25 mils since 2019, and as Councilwoman Robson pointed out earlier today, prior to that it was 6.5 mils, so it has actually been lowered in the last 6 years. Due to a property tax increase, due to a increase in DeKalb's reevaluation of real property tax assessments, I apologize, the proposed millage rate of 6.25 mils will result in an increase in property taxes by 7.81%. And this is due to the value of the property, not because, of course, as you know, the millage rate going up. The city will adopt the millage rate at the June 25th, 2025, after the June 25th, 2025 third and final public hearing at 6 p.m. The next slide shows the current 2025 property tax digest and 5-year history of the levy. You can see the history going back actually to 2020. This is the first year since 2020 that we haven't seen double-digit growth in the net digest. We're coming in roughly just under 9% over last year at a total of roughly $8.4 million in net taxes levied. And this is very much in alignment with the projected revenue that we had for our 2025 budget.
Thank you. All right, with that, I will open that up to public comment. This is public comment just on this specific item. If there's anyone here wishing to speak in favor of this, come on up. If there's anyone wishing to speak in opposition, please come on up. All right, seeing none. This is not on the agenda later, so I will open it up for council comments. I'd just like to remind everybody that this is a flat 6.25 millage rate, which we have had in place since 2019. It is advertised as a tax increase simply because the value of our homes have gone up. So therefore, when the value of your homes rise, no matter if you keep the percentage at the same, it is still going to be a minor tax increase. So that is why it is advertised that way, for full transparency that yes, you will see a minor increase on your taxes, but the millage rate itself, staff is requesting that we keep it the same. The cost, just like anything else in your home, the cost of running a city has gone up. So as the cost has gone up across the board for salaries and the things that we are doing, it is necessary to have a little bit more in the bank to cover that. So again, this is keeping it at 6.25, but it will effectively increase your taxes by a small amount. Anything else from council on that?
I just like, Elmer, go ahead. Councilman Fife.
Just for the city manager, if you can remind us, please, what tax relief tools we have for our residents?
Yes, we have a senior exemption, and we have a $50,000 homestead exemption. That is an exemption on the first $50,000 of taxable, of assessed valuation of your property.
Thank you.
And you have to apply for both, correct? They're not automatic.
The homestead exemption, yes, that is correct. That is correct.
I just want to remind people at home that out of our tax digest, 70% of that comes from businesses in Chamblee, and 30% of that comes from residents. So if we effectively lowered our millage rate to the rollback rate, we'd be taking a significant cut to our finances, and we have to not provide the services that we're known for in the future. The other thing I would say is that that's why we try to attract economic development to the city, bring as many businesses as we can, because the more economic development we have, and that includes multifamily homes, apartments, the more money we bring in from those businesses, the more likely we are to be able to keep our millage rate static, and in the future, keep it static.
Anything else? All right, with that, I'll close out the public hearing. We'll move on into the meeting. We have under approval of the minutes this evening, we have the public hearing and the regular meeting from May. Did anyone see anything that needed to be changed on those items? No. All right, those will move to Tuesday. We'll move on down to staff action items. We have the Q4 2024 budget amendment. Daria?
Hello, good evening. My name is Daria Kriskus. I'm the Budget and Strategy Manager. I'm going to go ahead and present this budget amendment. This is for the end of 2024. The audit results will be presented at the July meeting, I believe. Yes, Julie's nodding her head. And so this is just to kind of get everything in order so that that's ready. The big change in the general fund is amending funds into the public safety department, and that's primarily for salaries. What we saw is, we built in a vacancy factor when we budgeted those salaries, but the increase in having the positions filled has resulted in some overages there. But we were able to transfer funds from other departments. I think it was city manager, city clerk, planning, different departments to cover it without increasing the size of the budget. Moving down to some of the others, we have the confiscated assets fund. There was a $4,000 expenditure, and we didn't establish a budget when we originally started. So we're going to cover that with some of the revenue that they brought in with confiscations. With the sanitation fund, we have, and I apologize about the next slide. I realized it cut off, but in the resolution, it has all the details. But I'll be very clear about numbers just to make sure that we cover it. So with the sanitation fund, there was $81,525 amended in. This is going to come from budgeted fund balance, and that is due to increasing costs for landfill charges. And then for the multiple grants fund, which is Fund 250, we are recognizing an $8,000 grant for the chalk walk that we received. And we're also transferring $15,864 from the hotel motel fund, and that is to reflect the full cost of the chalk walk, which was $23,864. That's a change that the auditors requested to reflect the full cost of the chalk walk in the multiple grant fund. And then lastly, in the hotel motel fund, you'll find that you see that other side of that $15,864 being transferred over. And that's it.
Any questions from council on this?
Just to be clear, so salaries and everything in police went up because the chief has done too good of a job of getting his department staff back up?
He's doing way too good of a job.
Okay. I knew it was dangerous when we hired the guy. Okay.
Calm down, chief. All right, thank you. All right, that takes us down to the next item on the agenda, which is 3473 Claremont Road. This is Taqueria Los Reyes.
Hello, Mayor and City Council. My name is Gabrielle Peters, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Planning and Development Department. This item was deferred from last month, so I won't spend too much time going through the old details. But again, this property is located at 3473 Claremont Road, and it is a dumpster enclosure variance. Next slide. It is located along Buford Highway and Claremont Road. Here are some site photos. So the next slide shows the existing site conditions. And then the next slide shows the original request. So originally, the applicant was requesting 2 variances, one from the dumpster enclosure location requirements, and the second was to reduce the required number of parking spaces from 23 to 18. Since the last meeting, we met with the applicant on site to discuss potential locations for the dumpster, and we found that the existing location of the dumpster was the best location for it, as they wouldn't need to reduce the parking, and there's an existing concrete pad. So this is the new site plan. No, I'm sorry, this is the old site plan, and then if you go to the next slide, this is the new request. So they no longer need the variance request to reduce parking. This is the new site plan. So on the site plan, they are proposing the dumpster on the northern end of the site, which is what is shown on the photo at the bottom, if you can see that. The applicant is still proposing to enclose the dumpster with a wooden enclosure, and they are proposing to landscape around that wooden enclosure. So staff is recommending approval of the 1 variance. And we did make some changes to the recommended conditions of approval, which are on the next slide. So the first is that the applicant the site plan and elevation should be consistent with what was presented today. The second, that the existing oil waste tank be screened with that enclosure. And then the third is that the applicant should maintain a 22-foot drive aisle between the dumpster and the drive-through sign. I'm happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is also here today.
Any questions from council?
Yes, I'd like to ask the applicant a question.
Well, now is not the time, John.
Oh, okay. I didn't know, is it going to come back up later in the meeting?
What? I thought it's coming back up later.
No,
No,
It
we're
doesn't.
not doing
because
hearings.
that's only when we do public hearings. This is later in the meeting.
My apologies, Councilman Mesa.
I've done
Look, I'm
this.
trying to keep us in order for once, and I'm still messing it up.
I've been doing this a little while, but I do make mistakes.
Good afternoon, council. Do I have to introduce myself?
No, I'm just going to ask you a question. This is not your time to ask. I just want to know, how are you with the recommendations? Does this operationally work for you? And other than the cost of the construction of the dumpster, does it seem to work out for you with staff conditions?
According to staff conditions presented right now, yes. In the beginning, we had recommended the original thing, so we were a little frustrated with the fact that it comes down to the same thing that we started to, like the beginning of the process.
Sometimes it takes a long way to get home.
I know. But we are completely in agreement with what is provided, and we just want to do it with wood, honestly. That's like the only thing. I understand that it's like...
That's why I prefaced my question, other than the construction cost of the enclosure, are you fine with other conditions as far as like the location and that kind of
Yes,
stuff? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question on that. You rent the property, correct?
Yes, we rent it out.
So wouldn't the landlord be the one responsible for the build-out of the dumpster?
We haven't had contact with him at all since the beginning of it. He won't contact us, so we're not sure how to vocal this to him, so we wouldn't really know. I mean, we're taking the matter into our own hands because we're the CFO. I understand that we need to build the dumpster enclosure, so I don't really know what his reaction to this would be.
As a landlord, he should be responsible for this.
Yes,
But I understand the challenge of the communication.
thank you.
You good? Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being patient.
All right, that takes us down to the next item on the agenda, which is 3127 Chamblee Dunwoody Road. This is Chamblee Dunwoody Crossing.
So this application is a new waiver request. Before we get too far, I want to give you the history of this application. So this was previously approved in 2021. It is the construction of a commercial development. They're proposing 3 buildings. So in 2021, council approved the development with 2 waivers. Late last year, I want to say October, they submitted building permits, and we found that the building permits were not in substantial conformity with the elevations presented to council in 2021. So as a result, the UDO states that if you are revising any conditions of approval, you need to come back before council as a new application. So that's the background on this. So again, this is 3127 Chamblee Dunwoody Road. The applicant is requesting 2 waivers, and it is for the construction of 3 single-story commercial retail and restaurant buildings totaling about 18,000 square feet. This is some site photos. So again, they are requesting 2 waivers to not provide interparcel access to the north and west. These waivers were previously requested back in 2021 and were also granted. So here is the existing conditions of the site. At this point, the buildings have been demolished, which you could see in the site photos. This is the 2021 site plan. And the next couple slides show the elevations. So this view is if you're standing at Chamblee Dunwoody Road and you're looking at all 3 buildings. So that was approved in 2021. And then that's a closer look at those elevations. And those were the renderings from 2021. So this is the new proposed site plan. The applicant is not proposing any changes to the actual site layout. So the buildings, the parking, streetscape, all of that is to remain exactly as presented in 2021. And then this is what's changing. So the top of the slide is, again, the view from Chamblee Dunwoody Road. And in the next couple slides, you'll see the 2 elevations together. But this is just a detailed view of those 3 buildings. So this is a side-by-side comparison. So the top is what was approved in 2021, and the bottom is what they are now proposing and what was submitted with their building permits. So the biggest change is in 2021, they were showing a rooftop patio on the middle building, the smaller of the 3. They are no longer proposing that rooftop patio, and then they're making some substantial changes to the architectural elements. So changes and reconfiguration of building materials, the awnings have changed, and so we found that this was not in substantial conformity, and that's why they're before you again today. So staff is recommending approval with conditions of the waivers, and then we are also recommending approval of the same conditions that were previously presented and approved in 2021. And I'm not sure if the applicant is here. Yes.
Any questions for the applicant or for staff on this item?
And maybe the applicant can ask this question. What is, say, the top 2 or 3 significant differences that triggered the substantial conformity clause? Does that make sense the way I said that? Like, I mean, sometimes it's the sidewalk jutting, sometimes it's, I'm just wondering what the top 3, because it was hard for me to try to peel the onion on that.
Yeah, so in this case, what triggered it not meeting substantial conformity was the removal of that rooftop patio. And then because there was significant changes in the elevation, so if you go back to the comparison, you can see that the elevations are vastly different from 2021 to now. And so, if the applicant were to, let's say, change the awnings from, what was presented in 2021 and what they're doing now, I don't think that would have triggered them to come back, but it's mainly that significant change on the rooftop.
So my next question would be for the applicant, why did you make, because I like the 2021 elevations a lot better, but I know there's marketplace realities and some other stuff, so I'd like to hear that.
Hey, good evening. I'm Nathan Dockery. I'm the representative for the owner. We got involved about a little over a year ago and started working on this project. My understanding is when those drawings, those conceptual drawings, the owner had hired a firm just to handle the rezoning and do the conceptual drawings. She then hired an engineering firm and an architect to complete the full drawings on the entire project when she was doing the demolition. During the civil engineering firm worked with the city of Chamblee and couldn't meet the parking ordinance with the rooftop patio. So they all agreed to remove the rooftop patio and the parking would be in accordance. So that's why the rooftop patio actually came off, because they couldn't park the site per the city ordinance without coming back and requesting like a 20 parking space variance or something like that. So it was way too much. So they took the rooftop patio off. The elevation changes were merely just going from a conceptual company that just draws what I'll call like pretty pictures. And then she hired an architecture firm and basically asked them to draw the buildings. When we worked with staff, when we redid, these are actually revised from what we submitted back in September. Most of those materials are actually the same, like on the corners. If you look, and I'll call it like it looks like a siding material. It's actually the same material in both drawings. The architects just used different line weights. So I think the elevations on these drawings look different for some of those materials, but they're actually the same materials. And that's something that we had a Zoom call with staff and went through these changes to talk about, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, the head of the meeting. But he kind of helped us work with the architect, and we made a lot of the elevations have the same materials so that they would have the same look, but with the way that the actual like people that are moving into the building, the tenants, that they need their windows and their doors, some of that changed just as a function of their businesses. And that was going to be a restaurant in the beginning. This smaller building has got a different use now, so the layout's a little different. So some of those material changes, they look different on paper, but like the colors and materials, the brick, the stone, those are actually all the same. The siding. I guess we could try to like work up some sort of rendering maybe. I don't know if we could submit that between now and Tuesday. That might be tricky, but
I think if you look at this building and the styling of that building, I think you'll see that the 2021 seems to, not that we're asking you to match, but obviously I have a preference towards that design characteristics. I don't know how I feel about there's no applicant, there, but I wonder why the parking variance or parking requirement was not picked up in 2021, because it's clearly showing it was a rooftop use. So it should have picked up then, should it not have? And was that discussed? Refresh my memory on that.
So I'm not sure what was discussed in 2021. What we do
That's
now
fair.
is we verify that they can meet all requirements of the UDO up front. That way, a list of accurate variances are requested at one time.
So, not putting you on the spot, but was his statement said he had to come back and ask for 20 variance for the parking spaces? He's already approved, so it seemed like that would have been done at that time. That's what doesn't ring true to me.
Can you repeat what you said?
So in the drawing, it shows there's a rooftop deck, and this is approved plan. Everything was approved, including the parking situation. So why would he need to come back now if he was to build that 2021 design? Why would he need to come back and ask for a parking variance? Seems like that's already baked into the original approval.
So a parking variance is not being requested at this time. So what's?
Was it in 2021?
No.
I get your question.
Okay.
So what he's asking is, if we got our preliminary site plan approved, the way it looked with that parking, with the parking spaces and the rooftop bar, once we went into our engineering and we submitted our plans, why didn't we get approved that way? So the answer to that is the city has the right to enforce the ordinance, whether they missed it or not, unless that parking spot, the parking lot count was specifically, notated. Is that like?
Yeah.
Because we had to change it. The engineer actually just, for, excuse me, for background on this, it took a year to go through the engineering and all the reviews with the city, because there was so much back and forth and they had to change so much. So it wasn't that it was like just granted over the whole project. During the engineering and all of our submittals for the LDP that we have, we did have to remove all that, which, I mean, we could probably go back and get that information, because there would have been comments on it.
Yeah, so we would have asked for the square footage of the buildings and verified that they were providing the accurate number of parking spaces.
I seem to remember that we did discuss parking and in that the location of this development is where it is, and it's very much a walking, I mean, of course, you're gonna need parking, I know that, but it's a very walking community that we didn't feel that it was gonna be that big of a problem. That was one thing. I vaguely remember that, because it was a long time ago. But if you don't build something, even if it's approved over X amount of years, then it kind of goes away anyway, doesn't it?
Not for variances. Variances run with the land, so.
I mean, we could get, I wasn't involved in that part of it. We're helping her. She was just working with the engineer.
Yeah, I think that would be good to do, to find out what actually did transpire in that.
Yeah, and you specifically said, we didn't want to have to ask for a variance, and I'm trying to put you on the spot. If they don't want to build the parking spaces and they want to build the building another way, that's a totally different situation, but what I'm trying to say is if you don't want to ask for the variances for the parking space because you won't be able to find it, then it's different in my head, and I may have to take a little time and do my own research and figure out what the options are, but if they don't want a rooftop deck, they have a use that's not going to go in and they can't do it, but I just didn't want that 22 parking space be the reason that you're not building the 2021 version versus the 2025 version.
I wasn't involved during that. This is all what I've been told.
Yeah. Sounds like we may need to do a little research on this, but we'll see.
So in other words, if it was approved back then, as with the deck, then you shouldn't have to apply for a variance, a parking variance, if you put that deck, the rooftop dining deck on there. Is that what you're trying to get at?
I think I am, but I also understand that if there's an errors and omissions during the process, that's I just don't know what the limitations of that, and that's something that I would probably discuss with Kristen or
I think we
Vivian or-
need to look into this one a little bit
Yeah,
further.
it seems like we need to do a little digging,
Yeah.
figure out what our options are exactly.
Because I think having that deck would be a really nice thing. The other thing to me about the top version versus the 25 version, you don't have the shadows in, so it's hard to tell, but there's a lot of nice awnings over the windows in the top, and I see that there are awnings, I think. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
A lot of this is line weights. I could ask the architect if he could try to mirror the line weights, because I think you would see a lot of the same features. He redid it after we had our call. The architect actually went back and incorporated the corners and the awnings and a lot of the same features and tried to mirror it without changing the shape of our building, just because, like on the left building, that tenant needs the full height ceiling all the way up, so we needed a continuous roof line, for example, so she's taller. And I could probably get him to change that pretty quick.
Colors added in there.
There's some architecture.
Yeah, there's some details in there, so that, yeah, after you pointed that out, and I don't think I still would have saw it until you pointed that out, so I appreciate that. Same group. Same group here is looking at the same picture, so. I got it.
Okay. Because I would love to see some of these architectural elements that are on the top.
There's also that element they may just not want to build a restaurant anymore. That's what the plans.
They haven't answered that question. I've
Yeah,
asked it.
but it's,
Oh.
yeah. I was saying the owner may not just want to build a restaurant anymore.
She's got 2 grease traps still at the site. There's 2 other opportunities for restaurants in each of the larger buildings. So I don't know, maybe she's fixing that in a restaurant, or she already has a restaurant.
I think we both need to do a little research on, figure out exactly where the break points are and what.
Compare the building permit comments with what was commented in their 2021 submittal and verify what was said about parking.
Because we have an LDP right now. We already have that in hand. This was the only thing missing for us to go build. Yes. Yeah, they've got the little hatch lines. They've got the hatch lines on them. If you look, there's one on the left side of the left building. There's one on the left side of the center building. There's one in the middle of they've got the 2 little 45-degree angles. This is also just the street front. All these buildings they actually run deep in the property. So you're really kind of looking at a side that's the front. So probably not as many doors. When you get inside the site, all the doors will be along on that.
All right, anything else? All right, thank you, sir. Thanks. All right, that takes us down to 3477 Chamblee Dunwoody Way. This is Railway 3477.
This was another deferred application from May. So I'll quickly go through what you guys already know. I can get my notes together, I'm sorry. All right, so this is 3477 Chamblee Dunwoody Way. The applicant is proposing 2 variances and 3 waivers for the renovation of an existing office building into a restaurant with outdoor seating. As a reminder, it's located off of Chamblee Dunwoody Way, just northwest of Peachtree Road. These are some existing site photos. And this is the existing survey of the property. So the next slide are the previous requests that were asked in May. So quickly going through it, the applicant requested to not meet the dumpster location requirements, to reduce the minimum parking from 20 to 0, and then 3 waivers. The first to reduce the landscape strip from 5 to 0, to not locate street trees every 40 feet, and to not locate the lights every 80 feet. That's to match the existing streetscape that the Lumen installed. So this is the site plan that was previously presented in May, and these are the elevations that were also previously presented in May. So since the May meeting and today, we met with the applicant and just kind of clarified a few things with them. So as a result of that meeting, we learned that the applicant was not counting that storage building in the back towards their parking because a use wasn't identified. They weren't going to do anything with it. Now the applicant is proposing to use it as event space on the first floor, storage on the top floor. And so because parking is calculated based on square footage, it did require the parking variance to be increased from 20 to 25. So instead of a variance to reduce it from 20 to 0, they're now asking for a variance to reduce it from 25 to 0. They did get letters, or a letter from the adjacent property owner where they did agree. The adjacent property owner agreed to allow the applicant to park cars on their site after 5 p.m., which the applicant can speak more to if you would like more information on that. But the rest of the requests remain the same. So there's no other changes on the request. There's no changes on the site plan. Again, the interior plan, the only change to this is that they identified a use for that rear accessory building, which again is to do event space on the bottom and storage on the top. And then the biggest change are these elevations. So they are now proposing awnings, or like a larger awning over the outdoor seating area. So that's what that first slide showed, and then these are the renderings of the new elevations. So that's a better view of that new awning that they added. And then this is the side closest to the lumen, which is now called the Bexley. So staff continues to recommend approval of the variances and waivers. And then if you go to the next slide, we did change our recommended conditions of approval. So the first is to be in substantial conformity with what was presented today. And then the second, the applicant should work in good faith with surrounding property owners to secure parking for employees and patrons. So that this condition is written so that it doesn't require a shared parking agreement, but that the applicant should still work with adjacent property owners to get, additional off-site parking. So, happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council on this item?
You have any?
I do.
Go for it.
So I liked the project before and how you laid it out, and I like it even better now. Yeah, you can go ahead. I don't think I have any questions. Probably just go do a lot of talking. I will remind staff, because the ones that maybe weren't here at the time, we put parking in the apartment complex, the public parking, which is essentially your neighbor. It is available to your employees and customers to park there because it was part of their incentive package and conditions of the construction of that project. So I don't know if you're aware of that parking deck does have, somebody remember, is it 60 or is it 50-ish?
Lake is saying 69.
What'd you say? 69, I'd say I wouldn't know it was 60. 69 parking spaces over there that is available to the public to park in that space over there. And we put that in there just because at the time, we recognized that your property and some of the other properties in the other were never going to be able to manufacture parking. So that's why it's there. So I want to remind staff that that's why the people in that area, that 69 parking spaces is for that purpose. Because we recognize a lot of these properties around there, along with Southbound and all them, that would need that and be able to use that. So I would put for sure, my employees over there. It's somewhat secure.
We've already worked out with Wesley, so he will allow a couple employees.
Who is
to
this?
park on his
You
property.
worked out with who?
The property next door, Kelly Knapp office.
Yes.
So he will allow a couple of employees to park during the day, and then after 5 p.m. we can use it fully.
Got it.
So we can park up to 10
Anyway,
cars there.
I just wanted to remind you of that fact that it is there, it is available, and citizens of Chamblee paid for it to be able to be used, so your properties like yours can be developed.
All right, Leslie?
I do have questions. I'm having a little bit of problem with pulling up the proper site plan.
Can we go
With the
back to the
current-
site plan?
You already passed it. Okay, I see. This is the one I want. So you have a ramp. Is that a ramp in the back between that accessory building?
Yes,
And what's the purpose of that ramp? Is that ADA?
yes. I thought it was, architect thought it was required. Do we have two accessible ramps for the
Yes.
wheelchair?
So will you not have to put a paved sidewalk out to the front so that your patrons will be able to get out to the street? Or, the diagonal lines there that have the trees on them, that's not going to be paved.
No, there's going to be a green
So
space.
you're not going to have an ADA sidewalk to access that.
Excuse me, sorry, pardon me. The reason for the ramp there is just if people with a wheelchair wanted to access, like, for the party space, like the auxiliary building, so they could be able to access through the front and through either the restaurant or the patio, and they'd be able to access the auxiliary building in the back.
It's into the back.
Backyard.
Yeah.
It's for the back building.
Huh?
It's primarily for the back building,
That's just to access the back building.
yes. Because there'd be no other way for them
We'd
to
have
access.
you would have to come through the restaurant, it looks like, to
That's-
get to
yeah,
from one
okay.
ramp to the other ramp.
I see. I thought you have two ADA ramps, which I guess is fine, and this one down in the front accesses the front street, however you're going to get to wherever you parked whenever you came. But the back one is it's kind of goes nowhere that's really ADA accessible. But if that's not your point in the first place, I guess that's fine.
I mean, yeah, there's no way, like, if we had, like, say, for example, a party and somebody was wheelchair bound, they wouldn't be able to access the building then.
So the accessory building is going to be for?
Just like private events or
Yeah,
parties or
okay.
anything like that.
The lower portion.
I get it now. That makes a lot of sense. So you are going to have dining inside as well? You have a bar inside?
In the auxiliary building,
In the main building?
it's just like a prep area and a bathroom.
That's all? And so you have no interior?
You mean in
dining?
the main building or the?
Yeah, in the main
Oh,
building.
main building, yes.
Yeah, okay. Didn't you have interior dining originally?
No, we did.
Okay, all right.
No,
that's
but
fine.
originally, the auxiliary building was not used.
Yeah.
And that's what you proposed for us to, like, utilize it and not wait till, like, later to ask for more permits and everything like that. So we just because it's separated, it'd be easier just to have it for, like, private dining or, like,
No, I'm not talking about that.
Oh.
I'm not talking about the accessory
Okay.
building anymore. But last month, when I asked the question, are you not going to have any dining inside your main building? He said no, which is, what-
He-
no, I said
no, he did
the
not say that,
majority of our
Leslie.
tables were outside.
It's a
than
small
inside.
number of tables inside,
okay,
but there is dining, there is seating inside. That was why we brought up the patio thing.
okay, good. So I still love the idea that you got the covered dining outside as well. I think you're going to be very happy you did that. Your patrons are going to be happy you did that as well, for lots of reasons, but of course, the weather. So that's my question, that's it.
And it looks like that exterior patio area, whatever you want to call it, have the ability to have the plastic that comes down and the heat lamps and all that stuff, I assume, so you,
Yes.
and the coldest, which is usually enough in Georgia during the winter.
10 months out of the year.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I do have one more question. I see how your bathrooms are arranged, and I see that your doors are to the back of that little hallway that goes to them. But it's still a hallway that is exposed to the dining area of your interior dining area. I have a big problem with the whole sensitivity of people waiting to go to the bathroom. And it would be nice if you had some kind of a shielding wall.
Like in front of the
Like
hallway?
Yes, that
I'm sure there shouldn't be a
just kind of
problem.
let people wait to get into the bathroom in peace and not be stared at. It's just a preference that I have, and a lot of people have. You know, there's,
No, totally. I mean, I'm sure that can be arranged.
that's the only other thing that I wanted to say. It's always a touchy subject, but it's the truth, you know. We have a restaurant that opened here, and it's a great restaurant. I love the food, and it's all that kind of stuff. And they have the windows on Peachtree Boulevard, and it's great, and there's a hallway there. And people standing in line to go to the bathroom, to get into one of the bathrooms, are looked at by all the passing cars on Peachtree Boulevard. And I know it's okay, but it's not really okay. So that's where I'm going with that.
Okay. I'm sure that's not a problem.
People ought to be watching where they're driving, right?
They need to be watching where they're driving, and that's the other important thing.
Anything else from council on this item? Good. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Gabrielle. All right, that moves us down to mayor and council items. First item up is the city council communications and social media policy resolution.
Mayor, are you okay if I take the next two items together while I'm talking?
Sure.
Okay. So this is, I'll just be really brief with this. As you know, we've been having some ongoing discussions about some guidelines for interaction amongst yourselves, myself, our staff. And so this is a resolution, the communications and social media policy is a resolution formally adopting those guidelines. And, you know, we've had a lot of conversation about that, as you know. And then in addition to that, the proclamations and letters of support policy are some additional guidelines for providing letters of support, and as well as any proclamations that our residents or business owners or members of the community would like to request from the council. It just sets some guidelines for staff when we're evaluating those requests, so that not everything needs to come in front of each of you for us to determine what goes in front of you guys.
Okay. All right, that opens that up for Mayor and council, if anyone has any comments they want to make on it, and I think I would like to start on this, if that's okay.
Before me?
Before you.
All right.
If that's okay, do you mind?
That's all right.
All right, so I don't have notes, so I'm probably going to bounce all over the place, but I'm going to say what I'm going to say. We have discussed this, as the city manager said, for several months behind closed doors. This is my first opportunity to talk about it in public. I am vehemently opposed to this policy. I do not think it's a good policy, and I'm going to tell you why. It lays out what is called communication guidelines. It lays out how we, as electeds, can respond to our constituents. It lays out a plan of templates and drafts, and this is what we're supposed to use. I don't operate like that. If you get an email from me, it's what I'm thinking, it's what's on my mind, it's what's on my heart. I don't operate with templates. The other thing is it seeks to control what we post on social media. And it lays it out in a way that if you say something that somebody else don't like, there are punitive measures to be taken against you. If you know me, you know I'm very vocal. I understand that my role as mayor is to pave streets and fix potholes and to make sure your trash is picked up and all of that good stuff. But I think I would be a piss-poor mayor if I didn't speak out against atrocities when they're happening in our city. Whether that's in regards to immigration, whether it's regards to racism, whether it's in regards to anything. And I often do that on Facebook and social media when things arise. That's my form of communication. I understand that there's concerns that, speaking out as mayor on certain items, you could potentially risk the city litigation. In actuality, we live in a litigious society where anybody can sue you for anything at any time. So I don't live my life worried about whether I'm going to get sued for something. I live my life trying to do the right thing. I am very uncomfortable with anybody trying to control my freedom of speech. The world we live in today, you can say just about anything and get away with it, and some folks do. I feel like, as mayor, when I was elected, the public gave me that right to speak on their behalf, especially for those who cannot speak for themselves. And as the mayor, you don't have a vote. You can't get up here and you don't raise your hand and express your opinions on things. My only vote comes in my voice. That's the only thing I have. So I'm going to wrap it up. I'm not going to keep going on, but I am opposed to this because I understand the principles behind protecting the city. But I also understand that we have a right of speech, freedom of speech. And while some may think it's easy to take the mayor's hat off when it's convenient and speak as public citizen Brian, that is not the way it works. When you're sitting in an elected chair, it doesn't matter. You can say you took your hat off and you're speaking as public citizen all you want to. But you're still the mayor, or you're still a council member, and you're still representing what you were elected, the seat that you were elected to hold. So I have some very serious concerns about this policy, and I'm going to leave it at that.
So I've sat in those same meetings, and I won't say that I'm vehemently opposed to this, but I do have questions that due to personal scheduling, I won't be able to ask those questions of our attorneys before this may come to a vote on Tuesday. So at minimum, I ask council to defer this item to next month so I can ask my questions to the attorney and ask the questions. Because I had a busy week, as some may know, on social media this week, and some of my posts were called into question at one point, and then they were not bad. They were pretty good. Wasn't anything wrong with them. So I'm curious to how this policy could have come back to me if it was implemented at that prior to this. So these are the questions that I want to ask, because we listen to meetings and you hear a lot of chit chat talking back and forth, but now I have some very real world examples that apply to me, and I want to know how that policy will apply to me given the situation of something that I would typically might have posted on social media versus something theoretical. So that's kind of where I am. I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm saying that even though we've talked about it, I still have questions. If I'm not allowed to ask the questions and you were to ask me how I would have voted tonight, I would have voted no tonight. So that is all I have to say about it.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll just jump in here. We've been working on this for 2 months, so we've had a lot of conversation about this, and there's a reason we brought this forward. The reason we brought this forward is because, as the mayor said, we're trying to protect the city. In case we have anybody who comes in here as a demagogue that's far right, far left, and doesn't represent this body, because we all up here do represent this body. Anything we say represents this body, represents the city. We're not asking for people to work off the templates. We're not asking people not to say what they really want. We're asking people to put a disclaimer out there that says, these are my personal thoughts on my Facebook page. I don't think that's asking for too much, just separating the political from the personal at that particular juncture. We didn't create this communication policy because we didn't think there was a need for it. We're protecting ourselves in the future. We're protecting ourselves now from not anybody on this dais, from anybody that might sit in this body in the future and drag the city into something that we don't want to be a part of because they put their personal desires above the city's or the elected body.
Anyone else? Good. All right, that takes us down to public comment. The mayor is the presiding officer. All remarks shall be addressed to the city council as a body, not to individual members. Anyone wishing to speak shall come to the microphone, give the name and address to the city clerk, limit remarks to 3 minutes unless further time is granted by council, not speak a second time until everyone wishing to speak has spoken once, and no one can speak more than twice. Please do not speak unless you have the microphone and have been recognized, and with that, I will open it up to public comment. If anyone is here wishing to address council, I will remind everyone it is a monologue, not a dialogue. We can't talk back to you, but we can listen to your concerns. So anybody wishing to speak? Oh, come on now. Nobody? All right. All right. I don't believe we have executive session this evening, so we will close out our public hearing. Thank you all for coming.